Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, October 8th, 2015. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about homebrewing. This week, homebrewer Nick Johnson shares 4 fall-themed homebrew ciders that were brewed with interesting ingredients and yeasts that call to mind the cooler months to come. If you're new to homebrewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And if you buy any of our DVD combos, you get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener. You can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. We also have a Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing video page on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing. We're on the Google Plus as well. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. You know how it works. Whenever you think of Amazon shopping, think of us first. Click on our ad on basicbrewing.com, and it'll take you back to Amazon. You won't be paying any extra. You won't notice, but we will, because you'll be helping us to bring you this show, and we greatly appreciate your support. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site, too. And we have a link to the Brew Your Own electronic edition as well, so check that out. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes, our Android app on Amazon.com. We have a Windows Phone app. We're on the BlackBerry podcast directory, and we're on the Stitcher app as well. If you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our guitar case, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support. And thanks to everybody who's done so already. And still, if you are a new subscriber in that basicbrewing.com/support link, I will send you the links to this past year's bonus video and recipe PDF that Steve and I made. As you probably know, I took last week off from the podcast because my dad passed away. And I usually pride myself in taking the show must go on spirit. In fact, this is the first time in 10 years that we've had an unscheduled absence. Even when my mom passed away in 2006, the timing was that Basic Brewing Radio didn't miss a beat. And at that time, I didn't feel comfortable in sharing such a personal loss with listeners. But this time, events conspired to knock the show off the rails, and that's okay. I greatly appreciate all the expressions of condolence and support that I've received from all of y'all, and especially those who have recently lost parents yourself. So Dad was sent home in November this past year on hospice with 30 days to live. Well, I guess he showed them. Once he got away from the hospital, as often happens, he rallied and was able to spend a lot of quality time in his home, keeping in contact with friends and loved ones, and he passed away just as he wished in his own bed. So we are glad for that. And we are glad that he lived a very long life, during which he achieved all the goals that he set off to meet, and he died just 2 days short of his 88th birthday. So, again, thanks to everybody for your support. So, this week is about getting back to life, and for me, that's getting back to brewing, and I will, thanks to the help from our sponsors, Desiree and Dave from High Gravity in Tulsa. How's that for a segue? This week I'm planning a brew that is easy, quick, and delicious, a 15-minute pale ale. Yes, even though the high-gravity electric brew-in-a-bag system that I have is designed for all grain, you can certainly brew extract beers in it as well. And I'm looking forward to cranking up that powerful Blickman boil coil in the bottom of my 52-quart kettle and adding 6 pounds of light, dry malt extract. And I'm only going to boil for 15 minutes. I'll add 2 ounces of Cascade pellets at the beginning of that 15 minutes and another ounce at the end of the boil. And controlling the vigor of that boil will be easy with the high-gravity EBC SV electronic controller. And then after chilling with my good old trusty copper coil, I can use the spigot in the bottom of the kettle to easily transfer the wort to the fermenter, where I will pitch a US-05 yeast. High Gravity has 3 electric brew-in-a-bag systems to choose from. You can customize them. You can check them all out at highgravitybrew.com. And I thank Desiree and Dave for the continued support of this podcast. And I really look forward to a very short and productive and fun extract brew day. Okay, fall is finally here in the air in northwest Arkansas, and the brews that Steve and I tasted definitely fit the bill for the weather. Nick Johnson sent us a set of 4 tasty fall-themed ciders. Nick Johnson, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thank you, James. I'm excited to be here.
From our neighboring state of Oklahoma. It's always good to have a neighbor on.
Absolutely.
Now, you sent us a set of 4 sort of fall-themed ciders, which was appropriate. Tell us a bit about, first of all, about your background as a home brewer and how you got into cider making.
Well, I'm actually fairly recent to the hobby. I started about 2 years ago, and I started with a friend who's a big wine aficionado, and we made a wine and a mead together, and I kind of got bit by the bug, and generally I kind of prefer beers and ciders more, so I kind of took a detour from there, and I've been doing it kind of sporadically the last 2 years, especially in the fall.
And so this is these are, as I said, fall-inspired ciders. You use some sort of unusual ingredients, or at least as far as I'm concerned, unusual ingredients. Pumpkin and pumpkin spice in ciders, and where was your inspiration to do that sort of theme?
Honestly, a lot of it was from the show, and I've enjoyed listening to the episodes where people have tried some unusual things that there was no way to get in a store. And this is my favorite time of year, and so I wanted to do some maybe traditional styles and try them as a cider, and then maybe kind of add a little bit of a fall element to them.
And what's your source of your apple juice? What do you use?
In the past, I've had to use essentially just filtered apple juice. This most recent year, I was able to get unfiltered, pasteurized cider, and it certainly made a difference. And one of the biggest differences I noticed was the alcohol content at the end. It seemed about 2% higher than my experiments in the previous year when I used the unfiltered cider this year.
What was your source?
It was just local grocery stores here that just sell the unfiltered cider that I wasn't able to get a hold of at the bigger name grocery stores. And I wasn't able to go to an orchard or anything, because we don't have any of those here that I'm aware of.
So they're not of any particular variety or anything like that.
No.
But you can make some tasty cider out of store-bought apple juice and store-bought unfiltered cider. We've done so on the show before using beer yeast. And I take it from your notes that you sent me that you also have had success with beer yeast as well.
Yeah, and that was kind of the big surprise this year. And in the past, it seemed like the traditional knowledge has always kind of directed you towards Nottingham, or at least that's what I'd always heard. And I wanted to branch out a little bit from there and try some. I've seen some good experiments with SO4 and USO5, and as far as I'm aware of, I don't know if anyone has done a Kolsch or farmhouse yeast before, and I wanted to see what some of those other ale yeasts, what kind of flavors we'd get.
Well, I love it. I love the experimentation and doing things that are different and interesting. Talk about your procedure. I mean, what is your general procedure for producing a cider?
Well, this year, it's relatively simple compared to making an ale. So, took the unfiltered cider. This year I didn't try and sulfite it. I didn't feel a need to boil the cider. So the cider and the concentrate I added directly to the secondary with the additions with the pumpkin seeds and the pumpkin puree and the brown sugar. I wanted to make sure it was sanitized appropriately. So I baked those for 20 minutes at 425 degrees in the oven. And with the two ciders that had hops, I boiled those for usually a 30-minute addition and then a 10-minute addition with the other ounce.
Interesting. Now, maybe we should start with the first one that Steve and I tasted, the pumpkin seed Kolsch cider, so that we can kind of get specific. Now, you list 5 gallons of unfiltered cider and 5 16-ounce treetop concentrates from Sprouts. Now, what is that?
It's the frozen apple concentrate that your mom probably made into apple juice when you were a kid. And I use that because in the past I've had such a low alcohol content from the normal, just plain apple juice. And I wasn't expecting to get as much fermentables from the unfiltered cider as I did. And it's just those 16-ounce cans that you pop off the top. And before I added them, I let them thaw out. But I just got them in the freezer section of the grocery store.
So as we talked to the Black Apple Crossing cider maker last time we were on, you're kind of, if you use just plain old apple juice, you're kind of tied into the sugar content with that. But you were able to supplement that with the concentrate and with sugar in some cases. So go again with your procedure. You did 5 gallons of unfiltered cider, 5 16-ounce treetop concentrate packages, and then you used 45 ounces of Libby's pumpkin puree. And so did you? Well, just go. How did you put this thing together? Here I am trying to explain it. Let me let you explain it.
And I would love to have used fresh pumpkin, use a pie pumpkin or something, but being that it wasn't in season, because I did these over the summer, the Libby's pumpkin puree was really the only option, and I added it into just a Pyrex container. For this particular one, I didn't have a sugar addition, so I just added the pumpkin puree in and just baked it at 425 degrees for 20 minutes in the oven and let it cool down, and then added it to the 5 gallons of cider with the treetop concentrate. And while I was baking the pumpkin puree, I was doing a hot boil with 1 ounce of Tettnang for 30 minutes and 1 ounce of Czech Saaz for 10 minutes.
Now, what did you boil the hops in?
The same pot that I boil when I've done beers in the past. It's just a 3-gallon stainless steel kettle on the stove.
Did you boil the hops in cider?
Oh, yes, I did. So I took a little bit. I think it was about a gallon of cider off the top to boil the hops into. And I'm not sure if with cider, if you get the same kind of isomerization of the hops in the cider as you would with malt extract or as you would in the wort, but I did that to kind of stay consistent with the technique that you would with an ale.
Right. And you're not boiling the whole amount of cider in that case. You're just doing just a portion of it. So
correct. Yeah, just enough to boil the hops in.
And then you mixed it all together, and you used White Lab's Kolsch yeast with this one.
Correct. And I started with a Kolsch recipe and brought that to my local homebrew store and told him that I wanted to try and make it into a cider. And we just kind of tweaked some of the variables a little bit to try and come up with a cider recipe. And one of the things we were concerned about, which I noticed when I was tasting them, was we were worried that the bitterness of the hops might contrast unfavorably with the sourness of the finished cider, which is one of the reasons why we used a fairly low hop additions.
Right. And then 8 ounces of pumpkin seeds. How did you treat those?
In the secondary, I added them to the secondary, and I took them in a metal pan and I rolled them just to kind of break them up, and then boiled them for about 20 minutes to hopefully sanitize it, and then added it into the secondary when it had cooled.
So I invited Steve Wilkes over to taste the ciders, and we started out with this pumpkin seed Kolsch cider. Well, Steve Wilkes, welcome back to the studio, and we're sampling again, and this time we're sampling. Welcome back.
Thank you, James.
So we've got our first cider to sample is a pumpkin seed Kolsch cider that has cider. It has treetop concentrate, Libby's pumpkin puree. It has hops, and it has Kolsch yeast. So I don't know that I've had a cider with pumpkin in it. Have you?
No, I never have. and it's very drinkable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I have any great insight into this. For full disclosure, I'm not really a cider guy. Although I make ciders every fall, I make a gallon or two, and they're drinkable, and I like them. But I don't claim to be cider for me has always been like kind of kissing your sister. So there's not a lot going on there, unless you're from Newton County, and then it's just the premarital.
You skipped right over Madison County.
Oh yeah, Madison County.
Wow.
No, anyway, so to have an opportunity to drink some ciders that someone has put more thought into than just me pumping some US-05 into a gallon of juice is exciting, and I've liked this quite a bit. So I've never had cider with hops in it. I've never had ciders with pumpkin in it. And it's definitely got that fall pumpkin thing going on. I can taste the seeds. There's that. I think it's because they're a little bit oily. Have I got
a pumpkin seed Kolsch cider?
Yeah.
But 8 ounces of pumpkin seeds rolled and boiled.
Yeah.
And if you can get rolled and boiled,
you can only do that in Newton County.
Man, when Newton County gets the internet, you're going to get in trouble.
True.
We're just strictly an Arkansas podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
No, our apologies to Newton County. It's a beautiful
It's
lovely.
Place. It's lovely.
But I get the cider taste.
Mm-hmm.
It's prominent and refreshing and apple cidery. Mm-hmm. And we have to say that it is definitely cloudy.
Oh yeah. It might rain later.
Back to the weather.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, you're talking about the. Sorry. Yes, it's not clear and sparkly at all.
No, but I always talk to people and they say, do you filter your homebrews? How do you keep your beer from being cloudy or And I say, well, I close my eyes when I drink it.
That's right.
So no, it's very tasty. I'm not getting pumpkin spice, but he didn't say anything about the spice in here. So
no,
just the pumpkin puree. You can get it with and without the Libby stuff. I'm assuming that this is without.
Yeah, and I don't get a big hop character out of it. But then again, the recipe only has an ounce of Tatning at 30 minutes and an ounce of Czech Sots at 10 minutes. So there wouldn't be a lot of bitterness, and that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, because there is some acidity. It is tangy, but and too much bitterness with the tanginess would be too much, I think.
Yeah,
and
but it's potent too, 7.6 ABV. So and it doesn't drink that way. It doesn't drink that big to me.
No, not at all. No, it's tasty.
Well, it's got a good beat and it's easy to dance to.
And it'll be interesting to compare against the next one, because now we've got a baseline.
Yep.
And this is tasty and it's interesting. It does make me want fall to come along. Ciders and fall, they seem to go together.
Yep.
All right. Well, that was good, and we will move on to the next one. So very tasty. Well, I think we decided after all that this was kind of the baseline for the flavor profile of these ciders. It was nice and tasty. It was more of kind of a straight cider than the others. Did you achieve sort of what you were looking for with this one?
I was glad that I felt like the flavor from the pumpkin seeds really did come through, which was a little bit surprising, honestly. And this was the one where I felt like maybe the hop bitterness kind of contrasted the least favorably with the sourness from the cider. But it turned out fairly drinkable, but maybe kind of one-dimensional.
Yeah, all these were drinkable. And it was cloudy. Now, traditionally, when you use pumpkin in brewing, you put the pumpkin in a mash, and you let the enzymes from the malt sort of break down the starches in the pumpkin into sugars. In this case, you didn't have that step, so the cider wound up to be cloudy, but interesting.
And I think that would be a lesson learned in the future. In the past, where I've used apple juice to form the background of my cider, I haven't needed to add any of the pectic enzyme or really even consider a filtration step, but that might be something I'd consider next year.
So that was good. Beer A, you're going to have to correct me here, Nick, because I'm used to talking about beer. Cider A was very good, and luckily I have some more of these, another set downstairs. But we move on to the second one, and this is a pumpkin pie spiced cider. And you said that it was very lightly pumpkin pie spiced. What was the rate of pumpkin pie spice that you added in?
So I added 1.5 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice, and this was from a previous year. I added an addition about 4 times greater that really kind of overtook the flavor of the cider. So I scaled it down quite a bit this year, and maybe the middle ground would have been the better, somewhere between those, would have had a better product.
And how did you add the spice? Just in the fermenter?
Just in the fermenter, correct.
And then you added 2 pounds of brown sugar in this one as well, whereas the first one didn't have brown sugar. So it's basically the base beer, but this time you're using SO4 and then adding 2 pounds of brown sugar and then the pumpkin pie spice.
Correct. And I think it was a technique that I'd heard on your show. I could be wrong, but when I baked the pumpkin puree, I actually added the brown sugar in with the pumpkin puree. And I was hoping to get kind of a caramelized flavor that would kind of make the brown sugar stand out a little bit. And it ended up not being very noticeable in the finished product.
So these, and we didn't say, the first one, or we might have said in the tasting, first one was about 7.6% alcohol, this one 7.3. You used less treetop concentrate in this one, less than the first one. So I guess you were balancing that out with the brown sugar.
Correct. And I was really expecting to have an ABV of maybe low 6s, high 5s. So I was really surprised at the final gravity on these, especially with the SO4 yeast, which seems to maybe not attenuate as highly as some of the other ones.
So here we go. Let's go back into the studio, back in time to Steve Wilkes and me tasting the pumpkin pie spiced cider. Okay, this is the second one that we're tasting, and it's up in the game a bit from the first one. First one we said was kind of the baseline.
Yep.
And this one is more interesting. It's a pumpkin pie spiced cider, very lightly pumpkin pie spiced. So we get the base recipe basically, and then we're adding 1.5 teaspoons, which isn't very much, of pumpkin pie spice.
That's actually it's 0.5 teaspoons, 1.5. Or is it 1.5?
Why wouldn't he just say 0.5 if it was 1.5? I think it's 1.5 teaspoons.
Well, I want to say it's 1.5 too, because 0.5 wouldn't do anything.
No.
So okay, I'm with you. Okay.
Okay, so we got brown sugar. we got 1.5 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice, and then the pumpkin puree that's been baked. I think it's tasty. I like it better than the first one.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's a little crisper. It tastes like apples. It tastes like fall. It's a little more refreshing.
But it's not a spice bomb.
No, not at all.
It doesn't hit you over the head with, here's some pumpkin pie spice.
Yeah, in fact, I'd have just a tad bit more in it if it was me.
Yeah.
And, of course, and it says here on the recipe, add more to taste. So
I guess we could just sprinkle some in.
I guess so. But yeah, it's really tasty. And I'm not sure what I get from the brown sugar, except maybe more alcohol. I'm not getting a lot of brown sugar out of it.
Right.
But that's okay.
Right. Yeah. I'm not. I'm not thinking that it is kind of molassesy or caramely or anything. But I'm sure that it's boosting the alcohol a bit, probably. One would think. But it's nice. It's nice and tart. It's more complex than the first one, where the first one might be kind of, you use the word flabby a lot when talking about wines that aren't, acidic enough, or that aren't, that are kind of flat in character.
Yeah. That's how my wife describes me too sometimes. A little flabby.
Flat in character.
Flat in character. But I digress. Yeah, I like this one better. The first one, I liked it fine. I like this one better.
Yeah.
And so there you go.
But it's still, it is still a cider. I mean, number one, in the first order, it is a cider.
I think the thing that I like most about this is that I really get a good, bright, crisp apple flavor out of it. And to me, that's important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which may be just restating what you said. It's a cider.
Yeah, and I think we were talking off mic that there are different kinds of apples, and it would be interesting to see what kind of what kind of apples went into this cider.
Yeah, for sure, because that's one of the most important things. And again, I'm not the greatest cider maker in the world, but guys that take it really seriously spend a lot of time blending different apple juices from different varieties of apples to get exactly the balance they want. And real purists will just use that mixing technique to arrive at the must. I think that's what you'd call this, is a must. And that's where they get the crispness or the sweetness or the tartness, in that blend. So it's a lot like making wine to me, where you blend, Merlot and Cabernet and Chabersin and all that. So this is really
Fabersham?
Nice. Fabersham, yeah. Jedi clamp it. Just in time for the summer blockbuster theme.
These are not the double knot spies you're looking for.
That's right. Move along.
All right.
Okay.
On to the next. So very tasty. Again, this one upping the game a little bit, adding some more interest to the base cider. The base cider was good. It was nice and apple tasting and delicious to drink. But this one added some more interest. So I think that if your goal was to kind of up the game on the baseline cider, I think you achieved it.
Oh, good. And I noticed that as well too. That it seemed to definitely have more complex flavor profile.
Now on the third one, we're switching gears here. We're not having the same base cider. This is a cranberry apple cider. So talk about this one.
And so in this one, it just has the 5 gallons of the unfiltered cider. And instead of using brown sugar or treetop concentrate, I replaced it with 3 pounds of orange blossom honey. And having some experience on the mead side, I was kind of hoping to get some of that kind of complexity. And just that orange blossom honey really imparts a pretty delicious flavor into a mead. And I was hoping to get some of that in the cranberry apple cider. And it ended up being a fairly favorable product. And I also added a 24-ounce bottle of pure 100% cranberry juice, which I had to scour the metro area to actually find something that had 100% cranberry juice.
Yeah, I think we mentioned in the tasting that I'd never seen 100% cranberry juice. Usually they have to cut that stuff with something else because it's so bitter. But this was an entirely different product, and it's something that and this one measured out at 9.6% alcohol. But we found it to be very drinkable. So let's go back to the we didn't talk about the yeast.
Right. I used the White Labs East Coast Ale WLP 008, which after talking with my local homebrew shop owner, I wanted to use something that was similar to the SO4 as an expected finished product and maybe be kind of fall authentic and reminiscent of maybe kind of New England cider and ale recipes. And this probably ended up being my favorite and the most drinkable in spite of the high alcohol content.
Well, we liked it quite a bit. So let's go back to the tasting and hear our thoughts. All right, this is bottle number C, the Cranberry Apple Cider. And it's got orange blossom honey in it, White Labs East Coast Ale, and then cranberry juice. It's pink. It has a pinkish hue.
It does have a pinkish hue.
And it's more clear. It's the clearest one that we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
But we're stepping it up again. I like this one better than the previous two. All have been tasty so far, but
yeah. Each one that we've had, I've liked a little bit more. Maybe I'm just getting a little bit more snockered. But
after all this, I'll give you some of my beer.
Oh boy, I'll really like that.
Yeah, exactly. You can sing its praises.
That's right. This is really, really good. I don't know that I can taste exactly. I can't taste orange blossom honey, but I'm sure that it adds to the complexity. I can't taste any component in here exactly. Can you?
I'm sure it makes it special.
I'm sure it does.
Orange blossom special.
That's right.
Now, it's more of a cocktail.
Yeah.
This is the least cidery of what we've had so far. Because I think that the cranberry juice is taken over as more of the star of the show.
Yep.
As cranberries are pretty strong, that's why you can't just buy. I don't think. Can you buy just straight cranberry juice, or does it have to be mixed up with? Because the Ocean Spray is a cranberry juice cocktail,
right?
Because cranberries are so dang tart and unpalatable by themselves that you got to mix it with something.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess you might be able to buy an extract or something,
But this is, it says, well, right there, 24-ounce bottle, pure 100% cranberry juice.
Well,
so I guess you can buy it. We're not going to, my urinary tract infection is going to be fine after this. But
didn't in World War I they have cranberry gas that they would just spray the troops with? And you're right, all their urinary tract infections would just go away. It's so strong.
Yeah, that was right before mustard gas.
Yeah, that's right. Mr. Mustard Gas.
Mean
Mr. Mustard Gas. Okay.
This is only the third. But yeah, I think that I'm not getting a lot of orange character from the orange blossom honey. But boy, it's tasty. It's have I said that it's more clear than the others? Mm-hmm. It's brighter.
It's brighter. It has a crisper mouthfeel.
Mm-mm.
This one's really quite tasty. I like this one. Everyone's gotten a little bit better as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think this is the most drinkable, I think.
Yeah, I could drink a big glass of this.
Well, he did send us two sets.
Okay.
Yeah.
9.6 ABV.
Wow. And we're drinking small samples here.
Yeah, we are.
But yeah, that's a tasty beverage. The other two I've liked as well, but I'm like you. I'm not a cider expert,
right?
I like cider, but this is tasty. I think that the cranberry juice adds an additional tartness to it that is complementary. We don't have hops in this one. We didn't have hops in the previous one. We didn't talk about that, but nice, very nice.
Yeah, I think it's really good.
So there you go. This was a delightful beverage. It was, as I believe I said in the tasting, a bit like a cocktail, and very drinkable and refreshing, and kind of fruity. And well balanced, and just really, really nice. If you were to change anything in this recipe, would you do anything different?
In a lot of ways, this is probably the one I was the happiest with, especially as far as the added fermentables, because so little of the body from the sugar and the apple concentrate really made it into the the bottled beverage. This was the one where I felt like that orange blossom honey really contributed something significant beyond just the alcohol content.
And we should mention also that each of these has yeast nutrient in it. And I would imagine, especially if you're adding a lot of sugar, if you're adding a lot of honey, that you are going to want to give the yeast a little bit of extra nutrition when you're doing these.
Right, and
go ahead.
I just added the recommended amount from the bottle, and then made an effort to really aerate it pretty well on the first 2 days.
And what was your fermentation schedule? I mean, how long did these take to ferment out?
The majority of the fermentation with most of these was accomplished within the first week. Because of my work schedule, I ended up leaving most of them in the primary fermenter for 4 to 6 weeks.
Now, the last one was and the title of it was the most intriguing to us, I think, was a pumpkin and peppercorn farmhouse cider. So talk about this one.
And this is one of the previous workers at my local homebrew store had a peppercorn farmhouse recipe that we discussed. And it's something I always wanted to try, never got around to. But I thought with the added addition of the pumpkin and the peppercorn, I could kind of take his recipe and adapt it to a cider and maybe hopefully get some of the barnyard flavors and aromas from the farmhouse in the cider.
And this is basically the first recipe that we talked about, adding, with the cider, the concentrate, the pumpkin, the hops, and then adding peppercorns in the boil along with 2 pounds of brown sugar. So you're upping the gravity by adding all of that in. But how did you treat the peppercorns?
The peppercorns I bought in a 1 ounce package, and I rolled them on a metal pan to kind of crack the seeds, and then boiled it in a hop sack. And I actually left it in the primary for about 2 weeks until I put it into the secondary.
So did you boil the pepper with the hops this time?
It was in a separate, smaller pan. So I boiled the hops in one pan and then the peppercorn in a second pan, just to avoid some of the hop debris in the hop sack that contained the peppercorns.
That's probably a good idea. So and then the yeast. Talk about the yeast.
And this yeast was just the White Labs Farmhouse WLP 670. And I considered using a couple other strains of the Saison yeast, but the guy who made the recipe recommended this particular yeast, the White Labs Farmhouse.
And so let's go back in time again to see what Steve and I thought. Pumpkin and peppercorn farmhouse cider. Again, I've said this many times before, but one of the things I like the most about this show is being able to sample all these different beverages that I would never have thought to put together, and yet somebody does it and sends it to us, and then we taste it and we say, "Oh, that's pretty good."
I turn into Foster Brooks. Oh, yeah. This is very interesting, and a peppercorn. And I'm all about these farmhouse ales now.
Mm-hmm.
It's my middle name. Farmhouse ale is my new. I put it on my business cards because I'm so into them, and this really captures the spirit of the farmhouse ale very well.
Mm. Yeah, there's I think I taste the peppercorns. There's kind of an earthiness to it.
Yep.
That I think, and you smell it, and it smells funky, or saison-y, or farmhousey. There is a darkness to it. It's still very much a cider, but on the first one, or the others that we have had the pumpkin in, I wasn't sure that the pumpkin brought much to the party, but I'm wondering, this makes me wonder if the yeast or the peppercorns or whatever are kind of interacting with the pumpkin. Because it seems to me that I get more pumpkin.
Oh, from this one?
From this one. Like the darkness, it makes me think, maybe it's just my imagination, but I get some kind of an earthy or a darker, kind of a richer character. Rich
is the good word there. This is very rich. I agree with that. And I think the yeast and the peppercorns. I mean, I really do get that peppercorn, and I really get that kind of barnyard, but in a good way, flavor and smell from it. I think so far this is the most interesting one we've had.
Right.
I'm not sure this is the one I could drink the most of.
Yeah.
But this is very interesting, and I like it quite a lot. And I've only had just maybe 2 tablespoons of it that I've actually drank. But boy, it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, the the cranberry one is the one that you take to parties.
Oh yeah, you could get in a lot of trouble with that.
No, I mean you go on a date with the cranberry one to parties.
Yeah.
This one you like to you take to dinner. You spend a lot of time with, and
yeah.
Probably the one you'll wind up with.
Maybe make it take it home. Yeah.
Because it's more interesting.
Well, yeah. You have a deep conversation.
That's
with
right.
It. Yeah.
But no, I think that that it's more complex than the others. It makes you think. You taste a bit and you say, "Well, what is that?" Oh, there's another something that I tasted, and
people say that about my food a lot.
Well, what is that?
What is that?
It tastes familiar. But no, I think that the yeast is, and maybe we're tasting a little bit of the brown sugar in that. Maybe the richness, maybe part of that richness is the brown sugar. I don't know, but it's the things are coming together. In this one, it's more of a mature, as in a developed recipe. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do know exactly what you mean. Boy, I just don't have anything deep to say about it. It's just got a great flavor. It's very substantial. But it's not. It doesn't just wear you out. To take a sip of it.
Right.
The great example I have is, remember when we tried that curry beer at one of the NHCs, and you were like, "Oh, that's really good," but I don't want to ever drink that again.
That's right,
because it was really good.
Yeah,
but one
ounce was all I wanted.
Yeah,
but it was very good. I couldn't imagine having a whole pint, but man, that 1 ounce was just really good. I'm glad I had it.
That's the standard by which I judge all beers now.
I could drink a full glass of this.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting and tasty. It's not you wouldn't want to just throw it back, and it's not it's a sipper.
It's a sipper, and what is it? The ABV on it is where?
Well, at 10.24%.
Well, there you go.
It's
that could explain the richness as well, a little bit.
Oh well. The alcohol might bring a little heat to it, maybe.
Mm-hmm. So this is like a barley wine.
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, as far as it's giant. Now that I think about it.
That's what she said.
That's right.
So there we go. I think we were deciding back and forth which one was our favorite between the cranberry apple cider and then the pumpkin and peppercorn farmhouse cider. I think they were both really good. I think that the cranberry apple cider was more sort of drinkable, but I enjoyed drinking the pumpkin and peppercorn farmhouse cider as much. It was, but it just didn't go down as quickly as the cranberry one.
And that was my impression as well. And maybe the pumpkin and peppercorn farmhouse cider is probably the one that I would like maybe to do the most experimenting with in the future, because it really did have an interesting and surprising aroma and flavor profile.
Yeah, there was just a lot to think about in there. Whereas the cranberry apple cider, not saying it was one-dimensional, but just saying that it put everything out there.
Right. Absolutely.
And then the pumpkin and peppercorn farmhouse cider, there was, between what I assume was the yeast characteristics that were being given to the beverage, as well as, what the pumpkin was bringing and what the peppercorns. It was just really an interesting drink to enjoy and also ponder, and which is what I like about a well-crafted homebrew. Just cider or beer or mead or whatever. I like the ones that you can sit and enjoy and think about exactly what you're tasting.
In that one, I was worried with the final gravity when I finally did the math and it was over 10%. I was worried that it would taste a little alcoholic, and surprised to find that it wasn't.
Yes, exactly. None of these were hot. None of these had the kind of higher alcohol, fusel, nail polish remover kind of harsh flavors that you get sometimes in really high alcohol beverages. So you did a good job in fermentation. What temperature did you ferment these at?
These were all pretty consistently about 71 degrees.
Wow. So that would be 23 Celsius, something like that. So fairly warm, I guess, in some people's books.
Right, and they were kept indoors in a closed, dark room, but they did the majority of their fermentation through the heat of the Oklahoma summer.
Yeah, we're about the same latitude, aren't we? So
yeah.
We got to deal with the same issues. But you did good, Nick.
Thank you.
These were all tasty. What's next on your agenda? What other things are you going to play with?
Over the summer, I experimented a little bit with a watermelon cider and used SO4 yeast that I'd like to do some alternate variations on because it turned out really well. And I did a Hefeweizen cantaloupe ale that just was also really probably the two best brews I've ever made. And I'd like to try some variation on those and maybe even consider breaking them into smaller batches, which I, in the past, haven't really had the time or the space to do.
Wow. Both of those sound tasty. Well, excellent. Keep us posted on your experiments, and let us know if there's any finds that you want to pass on to the listeners in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Nick and to Steve, of course. I love tasting experimental brews that use ingredients that you wouldn't think of using, and some may have questioned putting pumpkin straight into a cider, but Nick, he made it work, and he pulled it off. He pulled off using pumpkin pie spice without making a spice bomb. I know that pumpkin pie spice in brews is kind of a joke at this time of year, but that was really tasty. It's good if it's tastefully done. And the cranberry cider, very tasty as well. I hope you got some inspiration to try some new twists, some new ingredients for your next brew. In the meantime, if you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can check out our support link where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to our podcast. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. Get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combo, and you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store as well. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com, and if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We greatly appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are making and using flavored vinegars and 28-foot diameter winter above-ground swimming pool cover. Yes, in the northern hemisphere, it's that time of year to cover up the pools. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We greatly appreciate your support. And don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association or subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com, including the new link to the BYO electronic-only publication. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio, and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.